Hi, this is Kenya T. COVIAK. How you doing tonight? It's so good to see you. It is so hot. And welcome to Explorations in Herbalism. You know, it's so hot right now. And what we did this weekend, we decided that we were going to go and pick cherries in the heat because that's real smart. And let me tell you what happened, because we're going to talk about cherries today and the magic of cherries. But we picked 5 pounds of cherries because we thought that was a really good idea. Cherries are great for love. There's some other things cherries are good for too. Did you know you could use certain cherry leaves for victory, as far as, not in contesting, but maybe, influencing others? I'm not going to talk about that. You have to pay me for that kind of information, but woohoo. But anyway, but yeah, so when it comes to cherries, there's a lot of stuff going on. So we picked 5 pounds of cherries in 5 gallons of cherries in this 5 gallon bucket. And we had such a good time. I haven't had a chance to, and by the way, this is relevant, y'all, and we will get to the point. I hadn't had that much fun with my husband in a long time. It felt like we were connecting. Everything was really good. And there's a reason for that. Cherries are a fruit of love. Cherries are love. They can bring love to you. They can bring all kinds of happiness to you. Cherry blossoms are like sweet love, young love. Um, Not sweet love like Anita Baker, though. It's not that deep, like with all my heart. Okay, you know what? No more of that, because we're not about to get demonetized. But I'm not getting a copyright strike. But sweet love by Anita Baker, not quite that deep, but you can definitely have a little love going on, a little love connection. You get yourself some cherry oil, some cherry blossoms. And when I say cherry, I mean any kind of cherry. Black cherry is the big one, though. That's the big young gunner. That's the one that has the most oomph for your buck. But you got to be careful with black cherry bark. There's a lot of poison in there. You want to watch yourself. Watch yourself now, because you can't. People use that black cherry bark for cough syrup. Remember, I am not a doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice. But you can't just boil, cherry bark and think you're going to be okay, because if you don't boil it, it'll make you sick. And if you boil it not long enough, it'll make you sick. You have to know what you're doing. You need to talk to an herbalist, a medical herbalist, a certified medical herbalist, before you start getting into nonsense. Because as we know, cherry pits also have cyanide in them, So there's a little bit of wickedness in that cherry for you too. So be careful when you get in matters of the heart with that cherry. But before we get off into there, I want to hold on and run to this quick commercial break. Now, see there, look at what you didn't see earlier tonight. I hope you saw her earlier tonight. There's so much going on this station, and we wanted to make sure you got a chance to look at this. So let's talk about cherries for a minute. Let me grab my notes, which is like my humps, my lumps. Okay, another one. We're not gonna sing that because we're not getting a copyright strike. Okay, so they're good for love and fertility. We know that, matters of the heart. Listen. Never mind the notes. Listen, you can make charms with cherries. You can put them in your magical bag. I said magical bag. I did not say mojo bag. Magical bag. Your sachet. You can put them into your magical bundles, because some people don't use bags. They use bundles. They wrap them, they tie them together in some things. But I'm just saying. And for those of you who feel that winking is rude in your culture, I do apologize. You knew what you signed up for, though. But also, another thing you want to know is that cherries, the juice, is used as a substitute for blood in many workings. Now, before you start getting all freaked out and everything, I didn't say it's a blood sacrifice. Besides, if you were dealing with entities, whereas it's part of your religion and you have a blood sacrifice, I really hope you wouldn't try to substitute cherry juice. I really hope you wouldn't. If you do not mention me, because I didn't tell you to do that. No ma'am, no sir, no I am. Not at all. Not at all. But you can use it as far as, representing blood and the life force essence, not as an offering, but as part of your actual herbalism. Because in folkloric magical herbalism, it's one of the ways we can use substitutions. Cherry juice is not the only substitution you can use for blood, too, especially in love binding spells, which we don't bind people, right? But if you were going to, oop, my nose is itching, and you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen. When my nose itches, I'm getting close to something that is oh that means I'm getting something close to being oath bound. So I got to be careful. It's hard for me to get close to anything oath bound, but every once in a while I do get close. I almost told you something I wasn't supposed to tell you. That's okay though. That's okay. Y'all be all right. All right. But yeah, you can use it as a substitute. But the other thing you can use also is apple cider. Apple cider is also likened to blood in certain workings, and you could kind of like anoint things that need that, in a loving way. You can anoint things. You can soak petition papers in cherry juice. You can make cherry ink and enchant it to be a love oil or an oil to get favor, along with other things. Um, I would even say if you were trying to maybe influence someone, I would probably make a cherry ink. See, I've been giving y'all workings lately, haven't I? I would say maybe mix together some licorice root and cherry and put those together when you're making your ink. Remember, the ink doesn't have to be like something you're putting in a ballpoint pen. This is a magical ink. It just needs to get the job done. And you don't have to have and let's talk about this. You don't have to have a dip pen. You don't have to have a glass tipped dip pen in order to write your petitions, old school. You don't have to have a calligraphy, Lord and lady. You don't have to have a calligraphy pen. You don't have to have a dip pen with the calligraphy nib. You don't have to have that. You don't have to go out and get a turkey feather or some sort of feather, although it would help to have those things for focus. But you don't have to do those things in order for your magic to work, for you to get this going. But they don't hurt. Like, let's say you have a dove feather, which of course you might not do that because I'm sure you wouldn't have a feather from a migratory bird, not in the US. But if you're not in the US, you could, can you hunt doves? I think you can. Yeah, you can hunt doves. Let's say you had a dove feather from something that someone hunted. That's not a migratory bird. I think it is. Okay. But you had a dove feather. You would definitely want to take the dove feather and use cherry ink, and you make sure you make that ink mix with licorice root, with cherries. Should I give you the last thing? Should I do it? I don't know. I'll give you a substitute. So orris root, and cook that down and make that your ink. And do it with intention. Preferably on the full moon. Preferably on a Friday, because Friday is Thigh Day. And that's what I would do. And I'd make that ink, and I would write my little love petition. You could even write a love note to them. If you are artistically inclined, let me get that mosquito. If you are artistically inclined, you could even draw them a little doodle, a little sketch. We magicians like to write things out with pen and paper. You could do that for them. You could even make yourself a cherry-based pink paint. If you're hardcore and you are crocheting or knitting for them, and you really want to go all out, and I know it's hot outside. Why would you do that in the heat? But it is what it is. And by the way, those 5 pounds of cherries fermented because we left them out too long. But what I was going to say is you can dye your wool in the cherry juice. You could dye your wool, and I would take the pits out first because the pits have that bit of poison in them. You could dye your wool before you make your loved one an item. You could dye your thread in that cherry juice that you have enchanted and stitch together some garment that you're making for them or repairing for them. You could dye your parchment paper, and then you could do that as well to add a little love to whatever, and then use the cherry ink. There's all kinds of ways you can have some fun. And I'm gonna tell you, I know I'm naughty, but you're not controlling anyone. You're not binding anyone. You're not controlling anyone. But what you can do, you can actually make a very weak infusion of cherry juice that you have preserved and put some money in it. Make yourself a big bowl of liquid that has the juice added to it, just a little bit of it, and soak it in so it permeates the money. So that if you have to pay a bill, let's say if you were in one of those modern temples of dance and adoration to the goddesses of love, usually the ones where you need to bring a $100 bill for, where you get the lamb chops and get to see the girls, dancing, or sometimes the boys dancing. No shame, no shade. Um, then you could actually dip that in there and give it to that person, that money after it's dried, and give it to that person. Because remember, money's made of cloth and it's got chamomile in it, by the way. I'm going to leave that. I'm telling y'all a little bit too much. But money is made of cloth, and you could actually saturate it. Now, wash the money first before you do that, and then dip it in there and enchant the money, and then go and tip with the money. Now, listen to me. You can't control people that way, but you can encourage them to look your way. Yeah, that's what we're gonna say. But definitely you could do that. If you are giving someone flowers, you can enchant that mixture that we talked about, and instead of making it into ink, you can preserve it, usually with gum arabic, or you can preserve it with paint, with vinegar or sugar water, definitely sugar water, and you could add it to some water that you into which you add some roses. Take those roses for your intended, cut them off at an angle, let the cherry water that's been infused with love for them be sucked up into the rose. If they're white roses and you put a lot of cherry juice in there that you've enchanted, then they're going to have that beautiful pinkish color. You know how they used to do with the calla lilies when the goth girls and the emo boys used to, we won't get into what they were using, but they were putting something in the water to change the color of the calla lily, pink. So, yeah, we don't do that here. But what we can use is cherry juice, because remember, cherry juice is a substitute for blood. And if we wind up doing that, then that is something definitely we could do as a little treat, little treat. Also, you can make wands out of it. They have psychic protection. That's a good thing. And another thing that's important is the cherry juice is good for the heart. Cherry itself is good for the heart. I'm not giving you medical advice, but let's say you had a poppet or something like that, or a healing candle. You could definitely rub the candle down. Cherry juice, you can dry cherries. And now cherries are really hard to dry completely. You have to bake them till they're hard, then grind them up into a powder. And once you do that, you can use the dried cherries as a dusting for your candle dress. Okay. Ooh, I'm about to hold on. My nose is itching. About to tell you something you're not supposed to hear. Wait a minute. Let me see how I can reword what I was about to say. You can make a. I can't tell you that. Wait. You can make a salve. You can make a salve out of cherry, and add it to your healing salve. If you're worried about someone's heart, you can always do that, because the touch is important for healing. The nursing profession has something called healing touch, and it's not Reiki. It's called healing touch, and they use it to transmit healing. So you could definitely incorporate cherry into that. You can add cherry to people's tea. Cherry is actually protective. You can make wands out of cherry wood. Um, Personally, if you are musically inclined, I would even encourage you to go out and see if you can make a cherry flute. But understand, cherry wood is no joke. It's a hardwood. It is heavy. But if you know how to play the flute, and you find somebody who can make a flute out of cherry wood, baby, and then you dye it and shellac it, not varnish, shellac it, and dedicate it and smoke it, and smoke it in a smoke of cherry wood, orris root, and yarrow, and finish it off with some lavender oil, baby. If music be the food of love, play on, because you could be spelling and sorcery. But I didn't tell you what to do, because I wouldn't do that. Now, this is for entertainment purposes only. Get to playing that song. What song could you play? With all my. Anyway, Thank you so much for coming to Explorations in Curious Herbalism. And don't forget to check me out on my excuse me, folkloric herbalism seminar this Friday. You can find me on Facebook under Kenya T. COVIAK events. This week is Brew and Berry, and I will see you here again on the first Wednesday.